Welcome to our podcast. You are a terrible person. This is why. That's what we're gonna call this one. It's a follow up on the self awareness. I believe last week we gave, well, not last week, the previous one we did. It was very much a very broad scope of what self awareness is and the value it has for you, and it comes down to what we want to discuss today as well. You're a bad person. I believe that in your nature, and we're gonna kind of dive into that because you might not think so. So it's not like we're gonna prove it to you, but this is why we believe that we're all a terrible person. Yeah,
I'll come in there.
thank you.
Okay. So there's no shout outs this week. So sad.
Actually, you had a shout out.
Did I?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Which one?
Wasn't your friend said something?
Oh, yeah. That was such a nice thing to, I was so surprised. Our previous podcast felt to me a bit ambiguous because we had not gone into something specific in general. And it's very easy to feel insufficient if you don't consult literature to a certain depth, and then you feel like you're presenting this to an audience. But something interesting he said was, I'm exposing him, but it's fine, I won't say his name, was, it's so nice to hear people our age grapple with these ideas and also to a certain extent reveal struggle that they are internally dealing with and trying to figure out. And the acknowledgement of that and the exploration of these ideas can be very valuable to other people and to yourself, which is what I'm realizing in this podcast. A lot of what we're doing makes you think about things that you wouldn't have otherwise thought about so deeply, which is why we started this podcast. But anyway, back to the topic. Why are you such a bad person?
Well, I know why you are.
Oh.
You forgot to give a shout out to your friend.
Terrible me. So I'm going to reintroduce it because it was my idea. And yes, it does come off the heel of the previous podcast. One of the things that came up was, we're talking about self-awareness. But I was like, but you can be delusionally self-aware. You can think you understand yourself and you see yourself acting a certain way and you know why you're acting that certain way. And so you continue in your delusion. There's no way of knowing that you are going off the wrong track because you think to yourself that you're going on the right track, even though you're introspecting and it seems right. So this made me think about something that I had grappled with personally. And I'm going to start off with a story. It can't be too revealing, but I'll still try and tell it in a way that it makes sense and gets the point across. So I was in a situation where someone that I knew had done something.
Sorry.
What?
It sounds so like you're talking about yourself.
No, it wasn't me. Well, I come later.
Yeah, sorry.
Someone I knew
carry on.
had done something. It was an acquaintance of mine, you can call it that. And we were all so shocked that he had done this atrocious thing. And I thought to myself, it's so shocking, those people doing that thing. I'd never do that. And it seemed so distant to me. And I was like, never thought this in the moment, but when I reflect, I know that my state of being was that it's such a terrible thing reserved for people that are willing to do those things. And then about a year passed, and then I got into trouble for the exact same thing, and never really reflected on it until I was like in a discipline situation where I was like, wait, no. Don't. These were my words. I was like, no, don't judge me, or don't look. Don't. Hey, how can I say
Don't
this?
associate me with the other.
Don't
person.
associate me with. No. I was like, don't associate with me with this. It's never happened before. I've never been associated with anyone that's done it before. And then it struck me in that moment. I was like, wait, I was judging this person so hard for doing this, and I have so casually done it now. And I'm justifying myself. And I'm like, I know it's wrong, but like, it's not that bad. But like, also I was justifying it to the extent I was like, is it even wrong? I'm not hurting anyone. So I saw myself, in cliche terms, become the evil that I saw in the distance.
Mm.
And that experience, as bad as it sounds, humanized evil for me because I saw it in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it showed me how easily I can become evil and the evil that I have in myself. And it also made me very sympathetic to the frustration of people around me, of people that have done very atrocious acts. So whenever they do that, I wouldn't really partake in like, yeah, I can't believe it's so shocking. My usual conversation would then be, what do you think would cause a person to do this? And I'd always try and incite the conversation line of, how would you in your current state end up like this person in a reasonable way?
Mm.
And so this is the idea that I'm trying to get across. Most of us are reasonable, but some of us end up being very unreasonable. And so it almost feels in a sense like luck, because I've said this to you before, there's a certain set of circumstances and sequences of events that can make you be the devil that you see in the distance. And this is my theory. And an extreme version of the theory, which I would like to use as a debate mechanism, would be that there's a certain, with your current morals, with your current experience, there's a certain sequence of events and a certain set of situations that would cause you to do something like commit murder. And I posed this question to you before, and you were like, no.
I disagree.
And there's a couple of examples that I can go through, or that I will go through, in a couple of just philosophical concepts, just to try and prove the fact that if you were in Germany, you would most probably kill the Jews as well. And you'd partake in that whole idea. And that's the idea that I'm trying to get across. Certain situations, environments will make you be evil. This puts you in such a difficult place, because can you really judge someone? Because it's likely that you just haven't been put in a certain mechanism of situations that would have caused you to be the same evil that they are. Right. So just based on that initial statement, I think there is a world,
a lot of stuff,
a very easy world that you can become a murderer.
So let's break this up into two. Firstly, a side comment. I wonder how self-aware Hitler was. But anyway,
that's a great question. Did he know, and he was able to manipulate,
like
I think you had to be so convinced. There's no way you can be so convincing without being convinced yourself. Well, I would just think so.
Unless you're fully aware what you're doing is morally wrong, but you're choosing that life because of some greater reason.
How would you be able to convince so many people? That's
no, because if you have the power of manipulation, it's a tool to be used for the good or for the bad.
That is true.
But anyway, so when you pose the question that a certain set of circumstances could cause me to commit murder, are you saying the being that I am now, if the right stuff happened to me now, in the right sequence, I would end up doing murder? Or if I was raised in a certain way?
I mean now.
Right now.
So both. I would say both.
Okay.
I would say the prior is more easy to justify. The latter is the more difficult argument to have. But yes, I would say in your current moral standing, in your current position, if there's certain blind spots that if they were not manipulated but taken advantage of, you most likely can be pushed to the point where you commit soft murder.
So for the first, if I was raised, to be an assassin and whatever, I cannot say that I won't. So there I can agree very much. Easy. So I most likely will commit murder if I was growing up in the correct or incorrect circumstances. But I would disagree still because the fact that the right stuff happens to me now, that I would commit murder, because I don't react to life, or to the best of my ability, don't react to life. So I've made a commitment to Christ and the lifestyle He expects of me. So I believe that foundation, no matter what storm may come, will be that which I hold fast to prevent me from being. So I understand. It's like, I look at it as like this wave, and circumstances and events in life and all of this stuff can build up, and it can be this massive wave, this tsunami heading towards you with just never ending might. And that very much can cause a lot of people to just be pushed off and to just be pushed into the direction to commit murder for whatever reason, whether it is, if I kill this person I can save my family, or if I kill this person I can avenge my family. There's like two directions a person can be pushed in: to become the hero of his own story, or to become the villain, such that he's lost all hope and morals, and but because I find myself rooted in Christ and what He teaches, and I have that eternal perspective, I find myself not believing that I'll fall into the darkness. And the whole becoming a hero thing, I think, it's an illusion given by darkness, because we are not the hero of any story. It's easy to believe that you're the hero of your own story because you spend so much time with yourself, and you watch yourself, and you can glorify yourself, or at least try to. So I can see how people reacting to life can give themselves the reason to justify murder. But because I have what I believe an objective foundation, I believe I'll be able to weather that storm.
So, if I understand what you said correctly, you're essentially saying it's because of your, I'm going to call it your active belief in Christ, or your way of not reacting to life, but actively imposing your will, and obviously your will being Christ's will. So it's like almost your devotion to God and your intentional way of living your life. So those two together is the reason that you're saying you won't. I'm not trying to get an exact right answer, and it's because I've asked you the question now without giving the reasons I think it would happen. Okay. So this is difficult, because now if you look at your answer, you are answering the question of, or you're trying to answer the question of why people become evil, because you're giving a solution. And your solution is two things: a devotion to Christ and a very willful and active approach to life, not to just react, but to intentionally do things, intentionally make decisions, try things, react. Try things, reflect.
And a little bit of consequence.
So the implication there, though, is that if people actively reflect and devote themselves to Christ, that won't happen. But let me rephrase that. It's that implies. So the problem is, there are most likely people that have had a very good devotion to Christ, and also a very active way of looking at their lives, very reflective way of looking at their lives, looking at the consequences, and still have divulged into madness or evil, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is so that the two, and this is essentially me trying to motivate why you would murder someone even in your current state. And the first one is just the concept of desensitization. So slow steps. And the analogy most people know is the analogy of the frog. If you want to kill a frog in hot water, you don't throw it into boiling water. You cook it very slowly, very slowly. So slowly that it doesn't notice, and then before it realizes, it's dead. And we are all familiar with this idea, but not really the practical aspect in your life.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I'm proposing a reason why. Micro lies, or grievances, whatever you want to call it, small things that actually are against what you believe or a lie. Those micro things are often seen as, if you stand your ground at those micro levels, people often see you as impractical. And so a lot of the time you'll be like, okay, no, it's not that deep. It's just this small thing. It's just a small lie. And when I say small lie, I mean micro small lie. So perhaps an omission of truth, small things, and all of those accumulated together over a long time. That's what leads you to the ending up being an evil that you don't
desensitize.
Yeah, so you completely desensitize, but a very slow desensitization over time. That's the first one. The other one, and there's a nice example for this, is if you're following orders. So if you're a child, this is very easy to do. If you're a child, your parents tell you to do a certain thing, you are completely absolved of the moral responsibility of what you're doing. So if you now take that to the workplace, oftentimes if you're instructed to do something by your boss that's wrong, you'll much more easily do it because you don't carry the moral responsibility of what you're doing.
No consequence.
The unfortunate the problem is, what people don't look at there is the degradation of your own moral, I was about to say moral furniture, but your moral state when you do that.
Okay.
Often people only look or think your moral state corrodes when you make the active decisions. And I don't think that's completely true. I think that, and this is seen in one example that Jordan Peterson, he just loves to throw this one, which is, Auschwitz, people there, they do inhuman things, but it was under the instruction of someone. And that's the whole point. You can take normal people out of a house to the point where they can shoot pregnant ladies in the back of the head and feel nothing, just by slow strategic steps where they are following orders. And each of those small, I want to say, steps to something more and more drastic, they do find shocking, but just not shocking enough to not do it. So that's a big one, is following someone else's orders and the appearance that you don't carry the moral consequences when you actually do. Because after you do it under orders, if you go home, you're very likely to do it yourself, because somehow your something within you has already done it. There's an acceptance of that.
Yeah.
So the one for orders obviously comes into play when you're dealing with stuff at work or when you're a kid and you're being told to do things, not so much in your personal life. But those two together, that combination, it's kind of the same thing. It's like personal desensitization, where you let things slip because it seems impractical to not. And then also following instructions or doing things within a group where there's a moral, it doesn't feel like you're morally responsible for that decision, but ultimately you're doing the action. So when you're by yourself, you'll more easily go into that.
Like a mob mentality kind
of. And that's the Stanford Prison Experiment, which most people, again, have heard about. You've heard about it.
Oh,
I'll just give a brief.
Please.
So essentially, to give, I think it's, okay, I can't say the author's name now, Philip Zimbardo or something. Anyway, he wrote the book about, it's called The Lucifer Effect. It's how good people become evil, essentially.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Answer to the book.
Was he ever really good?
Right, so he did an experiment, I think he references the experiment, where they took complete volunteers from, I think they posted something in the newspaper, they took volunteers into a prison where they did a prison simulation. So these were random people off the street that wanted to be part of this. They did a coin flip to say, you will be the prison guard and you will be acting as a, convict, whatever.
Do they know each other?
I think there were also, no, not two, like 20 people, and then 10 and 10.
Oh,
so
okay.
it was a big group of people.
And they knew who was?
I don't think they knew each other.
Okay,
it was random people, which is
context.
slightly relevant. But the experiment there is to see, when people are given specific roles, how does their moral conscience play into that? And to everyone's disbelief, and that's why this has become such a popular experiment, is within a couple of days, it went from, just making them do push-ups, waking them up during the night. But because they really tried to keep this as real and simulated as possible. People were beating each other up. It divulged so low, and they were treating each other so inhumanely, even though they knew it was a simulation. And the concept there is, if you are given a specific role and you are acting under guidance, you completely absolve yourself from the moral responsibility, and you will make decisions way beyond what you do in your own household. But then the question is, are you really capable of making those right decisions, or did the role just offer you an opportunity to be tested? And this is a whole nother, I want to say, a curveball to this whole situation. The statement that I want to make, see how you react to it, is most people don't do wrong things because of moral reasons. Most people don't have, I have lack of a better word, most people don't have the balls to do wrong things. And then because they don't have this confidence to do wrong things, they cover that with the moral blanket and say, no, it is because I believe this is wrong and that's why I don't do it. And it's actually just because they are not capable of doing those wrong things. And that's completely, the man that shields his sword in the face of violence because he knows he can use it and how much damage he can do is completely different from the man that says, no, I don't want to hurt you, so I'm going to sheath my sword, because he doesn't know how to use it and he's scared of using it. And those are completely two different situations. Yeah. And so how do you know to yourself that you just haven't been given an opportunity to do the wrong thing in a space where you have the balls to do it? Because I know a lot of the things that I don't do wrong, like slapping someone across the face at work. Let's be honest, most likely, most of us, some people are very aggressive. You don't have the balls to do that. You don't have it in you to actually do that. So you're not really stopping yourself from doing it. There's no moral praise for not being capable of doing something and then stopping yourself from doing it.
Well done, you were incapable of doing that.
Right. So
it doesn't work.
That I think brings another extra dimension to how do you become a murderer, is you never actually given the opportunity to until it's easy enough, and then you do it in a space where it's safe and
for you,
and safe for your moral conscience to do what it really thinks. So those are the three, and these are not to prove that you will be a murderer, but they are a cautionary tale to say, how are you making sure that you're not being desensitized? Are you allowing micro things to slip? How are you making sure that when there is superiority over you and they make a decision you disagree with, that you just don't let that slide? And the third one, can you really be do you have the balls to be a bad person, or are you just too afraid to do these things?
Okay. So when it comes to the fact that if I really ask myself, can I really take a life? Well, we recently hunted together, but that's completely different. I recall the first time I went hunting, I was almost traumatized after the first kill. It was a small pheasant, and that hit me like, I took a life, and I honestly don't think I do have the ability to actually kill someone. So maybe that's why I was so confident.
I want to jump in there quickly.
Yeah.
We went hunting together now recently.
Yeah.
Exposing ourselves. But I would say I had a very similar experience, because I hadn't been hunting before, and the first thing I saw was a wildebeest that had been killed and was lying there. And, you get there and the body's so limp. To someone that hasn't seen a dead animal body that has just been killed, it's limp. And the way that it's been manhandled, and everyone is so normal with this, so you're better get used to it quickly. And that's the whole thing of the group mentality, or the authority mentality, of quickly climbing over some moral hurdles because there's a social aspect to it. And so yourself can even testify to that. And when you were shooting them now, it was not as bad. It was like, hee, this is fun. But how quickly did that happen? Whether that's wrong or right, it's still an example of how fast the taking of an animal life, the desensitization can happen.
Okay, so when the first time I was like, that just happened. Slightly, I was more coming to terms with the fact that, okay, hunting is almost a necessity for food. Animals must die. My religion, my faith, Christ says, animals are under our authority, and in that I can morally, mentally try and justify the reason why I should kill, and I don't, so maybe I should draw a line there as well. I don't murder, I kill. Okay, so there's a difference between that.
Okay.
You can respond on that later. So to murder, just to kill the animal, just for the fun of it, the sport of it, I
You believe that's murder?
I believe that's murder, and I do not participate in that. I only kill if there is food, or if it's to prevent the like the jackals to kill any of the lamb. So I guess when it comes to what I experienced the second time we went hunting recently, when I was looking at the swart wildebeest and I was right to take the shot, I saw it was standing next to its child. And then I changed. I was like, oh no, I felt so much remorse for it. I will not be shooting you. I'll try and shoot that one. Whom I then missed because I was last minute changing direction. So I wouldn't say I've now, because I've once done it, completely lost remorse. But I can testify that it's become easier to kill because I have killed now before. But not murder.
Okay, but I get that's a good point, and especially for future purposes, so people understand that you're not murdering animals, you're killing them for food, and you're doing it for the right reasons.
No, what I'm trying to say is, like I said, I think I said I wouldn't kill. I don't see myself killing. But if a man is trying to kill my wife and my child, now that I've admitted I do not believe I have the ability to take a life of a person, I now wonder.
You wonder to yourself.
Will I kill to protect them? Is that justified? Because the Bible says do not murder. But to kill for,
I get what you're saying.
I don't know until that day comes, which hopefully does not. I don't know how I'll act.
Something interesting I find about the picture that you painted was how there was a very fast justification of what you did, even though you felt certain things. But you quickly were like, okay, is this right or wrong? I believe it's right, and therefore I'm not necessarily going to suppress the emotions, perhaps accept them and deal with them, and then you feel them less from then on. But without looking at the reasons themselves, the concept of a conscience conflict and then a decision based on belief, and then the rapid desensitization because of the justification that you have. Perhaps the justification is right, perhaps it's wrong, but that's the point. That process is so easy. I want to call it's quite easy. So you justified it to yourself. It made sense to you. You believed it was right. Someone else could do that so easily for something else.
And that's the scary thing with different religions. A different religion might say to kill is right and to murder is right. And you put your whole life in the hands of that religion and that being who you believe to be God. So I can see how fast that can be a slippery slope.
Yeah, that's self-justification. So that's... And as a broader concept, it's how do you make sure that you don't do that? Because the whole idea here, that what we're trying to discuss is how do you prevent yourself from slowly getting to a certain point? How do you identify the micro steps?
I would say you must ground yourself in whatever is right, which is why everyone kind of chooses a religion nonetheless. They need
that is true, but even
standardize.
if you do believe in something, the micro deviations, such a bad way of the small wrongs, the small lies, I believe are the problem. Even if you do believe in Christ, those micro lies fall usually within a band of gray area. So I almost want to say, but I'm not sure if I believe this, the only way in terms of desensitization to ensure that that doesn't happen to you is to make impractical right decisions.
You'll have to explain that one.
So you make right decisions that don't make sense, but they're right to do. So even if it seems impractical to be so stern with a certain line, if you are not, all those small letting it go builds over time. So that's what I mean by
Okay.
you
Even
make
if it's
the impractical right
inconvenient.
decision.
So when you say impractical, do you mean inconvenient?
Right, not necessarily inconvenient, because I'm talking about ones that it seems like you're overreacting. It's like, it's not that deep. It's not such a big issue. Why are you being so, that's why I'm saying making impractical right decisions.
Hey,
So it's a bad way
I
of
do
saying
that
it,
a lot.
but yeah, that's a good thing to do, because
Oh, thanks.
you're drawing the lines clearly in the sand, and you're trying not to make the micro transgressions.
So like when people lie in a very minute way,
Right.
or they change what they said very discreetly, or they pushing the border of what it means to lie, and I'll be like, no, you said, quote, this is what it means, and I'll hammer on those people. So you're saying that is the way?
Well, it seems to be the only solution, because what's the alternative?
Okay,
So-
I get what you're saying. Don't allow microtransgressions.
Yeah, and it goes back to one of Jordan Peterson's rules for life of don't lie. Don't lie. No matter how small, do not, because
Yeah.
the like a big lie is a small lie away, essentially. So that's the desensitization. The other one is following orders, which is a tough one. So it's a bit different, because
Yeah.
and the reason I say it's different, because when I read this, I was like, I do this at work right now. I will think this is the right thing to do, and the person above me will say, you should do this, and then I'll be like, guys, this is what we're doing,
Because
and
he said
because
so.
he said so. And perhaps in that situation it wasn't, detrimental in any way, but that concept, your ability to so easily go into that dynamic is what allowed people to become murderers.
Okay.
And so, but then you need to ask the question: is fighting that authority in that situation, is that the right thing to do? And does it necessitate? Is it worth the value?
Questioning the authority is the extent which is required. To fight it, to constantly resist authority, is just gonna have no value, because you must question them, and if you can understand their thinking, then you can go in agreement to do what they did, because they might have a better opinion than you. Not so I don't follow. Oh, I wish
there
to
must be a
practice this.
line.
I wish to practice this always. I don't follow authority because they have authority. Who another person gave, who another person gave, who another person gave. I don't follow authority because of the authority. I follow the authority because I believe that person is in a position of authority due to knowledge and experience. So when they impose their authority, they're imposing their more knowledge or more experience. So I can trust that, but I should be allowed to question that. So if my boss keeps telling me to do something different, I'll ask him, okay, but this is how I see it. Why should I do it that way? In a very respectful, very constructive manner. And that's how I would approach that. But I know it's not always possible. Your boss could be a very terrible, not wanting to talk to you, just be like, listen to me. But that kind of person is what allows for the breakdown of communication and then microtransgression.
So the person that would say, stop questioning it, just do what I tell you. So
That-
so that's the point I'm
don't be
trying to
that
make.
guy.
You need to be able to identify when the space isn't allowing for that, but you must also educate yourself on how to navigate
Yeah.
that dynamic. Now,
Don't
how
just
are
run
you going
away.
to deal with that?
So if okay.
No,
Let-
you've
I'm gonna
explained
ask you.
how. You've
I'm gonna
explained
ask
how.
you,
Yes.
If you have that boss that doesn't want to explain and just says, just do it. I don't have time to explain. How would you navigate that?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I'd have to decide whether the decision that he's making me do is transgressible enough for me to make a fuss about it. because, and this is completely going against my previous point of making practical decisions or making practical right decisions. If it's not a big enough issue and it doesn't appear to make a big enough difference, then I'll be like,
That's microtransgressions.
that's microtransgressions. But I know that's how, in my current state, and that is the reason. If you ask anyone, that is the reasonable way to do it. And you ask the reasonable man, what should I do here? And they say, but the deviation is so small with this thing. Why is it such a big issue? And there's no perspective on this conversation. Then it seems to be reasonable. So it's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you are inexperienced. Because if you're inexperienced, your opinion is, if you're questioning, it's seen in a certain way. So being able to navigate the dynamic between, I question this because I believe it's wrong, and holding your own moral integrity, and also you kind of just need to listen to people with more experience, because sometimes it comes out later why they told you to do that. How do you balance those two? And some old people like that. They're like, just do it. You'll understand later.
Eish.
It's tough because you know people.
You know how many people say that to their kids? Like, when you're older, you'll understand.
Which is appropriate in some cases.
I guess it's appropriate, but it's teaching your kid to not think, but to trust others more than themselves, which is not a good practice. If you are to be held responsible for your actions, you should be equipped with the ability to consider what your actions imply. And if I had to answer the question, how would I navigate that? I'd run. If I'd literally say, listen, I am trying to have a constructive relationship with you, but you do not want to allow for that. We can either work on it, we can either change that, but if you continue to expect me to blindly follow you at my own risk, I'll be heading towards the door.
It's easy to say. It's tough when your family's depending on you for money. So that's like the whole conundrum.
That's like when a wave hits you from the side, but you've got no footing. You've got nowhere to. You can't take that hit.
Right. So I think a lot of what we've done so far is just outline the moral conundrums that cause you to become a murderer. Yeah. And just to put it all together, there's this video I watched by a guy called Darren Brown. He was, I don't know if he still is, he was like a hypnotist show type of guy, but he was very good. I think he's probably also a magician. He like tried a simulation where he told a random person from probably his following, which he does often, so it's not abnormal, that he wants them to take part in some sort of celebration or whatever. He brings them to the celebration, and then he fabricates this whole simulation where somehow this person bumps some guy, and then she sees someone beating someone up, and then there's a slow moral transgressions of just accepting certain things around them that they wouldn't do themselves. So just seeing it around them and not doing anything about it, because most people in a social setting won't do that. So just slowly. Yeah. And then he builds it up to eventually this lady is helping him carry a body of a person that had just been beat up, and then slowly building this up. But this person believes it's real, and he gets the person to the point where they push someone off a building. So they murder someone within one night. So using all these principles, and you must go watch it. She actually pushes him, and they had the guy on the edge of the building. They obviously had something to catch him, but she actually pushed him. And it's just to show how easily and how fast this process can happen. So you have to be so aware of the corrosion that's happening, because I think just in the way that we've described how this can happen, you think, it's slowly over time, weeks, years. No, this can happen extremely fast. You can accept, and then it happens. So it is very much a cautionary tale. And that's really what I wanted to get across in this podcast is I have seen within myself moral corrosion happen extremely fast, and how easily it can happen. And then hearing people say, how could that person even do that? To me, means that person hasn't come to realize how evil they can be, or have not had the opportunity themselves to be evil, had the confidence to be evil, and not realized how you're not as good of a person as you think you are. You're perhaps just blessed to be in very nice circumstances.
Yeah, and you don't have a sword.
You don't have a sword. And yeah, big cautionary tale, but I think that's what I wanted to get across.
So just summarize, why am I a terrible person?
Right, so
I feel like a pretty nice guy.
you're only a terrible person if you don't realize how evil you actually are. And the reason I say that is because if you're not aware of that, you're most likely justifying that and blind to it. And whenever the evils happen and you behave in a certain way, you just already cover it with a blanket and you don't see it for what it really is. So that is why you are most likely not a very good person. Because I would say that realization and the ability to sit back and see how you are the evil that you see in the corner is not something that most people do. And I would say it's because for most people, they haven't got the balls to be evil. Not because...
No, but it doesn't make them a terrible person then.
It makes them very weak to an opportunity where they will become evil. So if you haven't had the opportunity and then built up, I mean, I can make a very bad biological example here. No. They don't have the antibodies. They don't have the antibodies to actually fight off when that situation comes.
I think I can think of a practical example. Like, say I'm walking through a corridor and I see a guy pushing a woman, and he's starting to, really assault her on the level where I have to physically intervene or not intervene. And if you as a weak person do not have the ability to intervene, you are forced to accept that cruelty, and that's going to start corrupting you.
And that's a phenomenon of a lot of people get robbed or whatever on the street and no one does anything. And that moment of paralyzation, I actually want to say people that have done lots of bad things in their lives are more likely to react in that situation and do something against it.
Because they know
what's happening there, and they know that's within themselves, and they know how to deal with that. And they most likely can take action there because what allows them to take action is their confidence, their balls to take action, which is what allowed them to be evil in the first place. And the other people that aren't doing anything don't do anything when they're supposed to be doing something good for the same reason that they can't do something bad.
So I understand the being weak isn't what makes you bad. It is what opens you up to become a terrible person.
Yeah. And it's a tough thing to solve, because what are you going to tell a person, like, just try and actually do the bad thing?
Because learn judo.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, but how do you know that you are strong to evil if you don't know that you can actually do the evil thing? And then when an opportunity comes, when it is easy to do it, you will most likely do it because...
Yeah, you need strength. Let's not make it physical like the judo, because it's not just physical things that's going to happen and corrupt you. It can be very psychological stuff. What is right? What is the value of a Jew as a person? The whole thing that probably happened with the Nazis.
Oh, yes.
You're frowning at me like...
What are you talking about?
Yeah, so that's probably what happened. Like, you get told by everyone, the Jews are not really people. And you see how they treat them. And you don't stop them treating the Jew as a non-human. And then you start being forced to now either accept that you were a terrible person by allowing that to happen, or that what they're doing is not wrong. So I think, yes, for men, it is a call to be strong men. And if you're a strong man, you can at least, and even a woman, it's the same for a woman, you must be able to impose your will on life. Otherwise, the life will impose its will on you. And when the devil comes and you don't have, well, I'd say
that's a new situation to you now. It's brand new.
You'll get caught off guard.
Exactly.
If you're not, or this is going to be my personal experience, if you're an atheist, this might not make sense. But if I'm not rooted in what Christ says and what is bad and what is right, and I'm not aware of when the attack comes for me, I won't know when to, hit back, to resist. And so that's the one thing to be, what I kind of mentioned in the beginning, my devotion to Christ, that whole keeping yourself rooted, keeping yourself in a level of, what is right and what is wrong, and you won't allow that corruption to pass. So that's the one thing. And then also, I think this has a big power or a big part to play. Christ's assistance in the resistance of the temptation. Because sometimes I might not be strong enough, but Christ can help me in that. But that's a very hard thing to bring into this conversation, because how do you prove it wasn't your strength, it was the strength of Christ through you? It's a very hard way to philosophically analyze that. But I think that is something in which I trust, and I think the very fact that I trust in that gives me more strength to resist. So yeah.
Well, to summarize, so try to make the point that you're a bad person, and you've proved to me that you're a good one.
Well, a weak one.
But yeah, so the 3 takeaways. Micro desensitization is what causes you to take big steps over time. What's the solution? We don't know. It seems as though, and I'm coining this term now, impractical right decisions, when it seems like a very small thing to say no, to draw a line in the sand there, is a very important thing to do. The second one is be careful how you deal with morality around authority. How do you deal with situations where you are being told to do something that is a micro transgression?
Yeah, you feel it's like...
It's kind of wrong, but you think it's not your moral responsibility, but your moral conscience bears the consequences. And then the third one is, are you just good because it's easy, or are you good because that's the right thing to do?
It's because it's possibly your only choice. Then you're not really good.
Then you're not really good. Do you actually have the confidence to be a bad person? And how do you know?
You're not imposing your will on life. You're just luckily to have only had the direction of good choices. Good choices. I think I actually want to add a fourth one. Do you think about it?
Do you think about it? That's a good point.
Because it's so easy to just not consider what your boss is telling you to be morally wrong. Because it's quite exhausting if you never think about it, to now actively sit, okay, he has told me to do this. Is this right? Is this wrong? To not think about what you're doing is the fastest way to slip.
Autopilot. And
just autopilot.
I like this idea that we going into, which is, you'd think that autopilot there doesn't corrode the conscience because there wasn't an act of wrong decision that was there. But there's a subconscious element of when you transgress over a line, even if you do it without thinking, there's moral corrosion. And it's important to identify when that happens.
Yeah. I think people use the word ignorance is bliss very much to justify this kind of behavior.
But you carry the consequence.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I hope you realize some stuff. I certainly have, and I hope you have as well.
Not a very good person.
Time to go question the boss.
Yeah. No, sir.
Which includes...
Are we still doing the podcast?
I don't know.
We already said, but
okay.
It's fine. Which includes... just.
Hey, that's a rough thing to end off with.
Just
which includes God. Or...
Oh, yeah. We didn't speak about... Okay, I'm not actually speaking about on the podcast now, but we didn't speak about... we spoke about the moral corrosion that happens when you accept a decision and absolve yourself of the moral responsibility. But what if you do that in a good way? Do you gain the, I want to say, the conscience brownie points if you just follow God's authority?
And it works out.
And no, well, I'm trying to say, does your conscience, so if you had to imagine the conscience, like a litmus test, is it neutral? I mean, not neutral, is it acidic or basic or whatever, it's here, does it go positive or negative? If you now accept the decision of your boss, you corrode yourself towards, let's say, call it a negative conscience, even though you're not making the active decision, you're partaking. But now if you blindly partake in the other direction, do you get points?
So let's say you're going on outreaches, your boss tells you must go and help the children who are homeless, and the more you do that stuff, does that actually build your morality?
Yes, that's the question.
I would think so, but very flimsily.
I want to say that as well. I want to say the corrosion in the negative direction is much worse than or it's easier than in the positive direction. You need to make, I almost want to say it needs to be way more active to go in the positive direction.
So the thing is, the bad one, if it goes in a negative direction, you've broken down walls almost.
Mm-hmm.
You've broken down walls of steps that you're willing to take when it comes to doing immoral stuff. But in the positive direction, you're not building walls. You're just walking the road, because there are no walls to doing good things in this example that I'm trying to make. But you can then just as easily fall back.
I almost want to put this in an analogy and say it's much easier to demolish a building than to build it.
Yeah. And if you just are guided in the good direction, you're not building a house.
It's much easier to break down a building than knowing how to build one.
Yeah.
So
it's very hard to build proper moral standards.
But to break,
it's just
human nature.
Follow the wrong boss.
Yeah, okay. You can decide whether you want to add that or not.
No, we're adding that.
But yeah, we can end it there.
Shalom.
Thank you guys for joining us. We just don't know how to end a podcast. You know how people usually end them off? They're like, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you making the time to come here and share your insights with us, Mr. Ruan.
Thanks.